Can you beat Pokemon X with a gay pride? Happy Pride Month, y'all. Now, June snuck up on me this year, but I still wanted to get a Pride Month video out by the end of the month. So here we are with a pun of a video. In Pokemon X, there is a lion Pokemon, Litleo, that evolves into Pyroar. And I'm going to use a team of 6 of them, and they're all going to be female. I decided on making them female instead of male, because this is the gender distribution for Litleo and Pyroar, and I was not gonna wait to get 6 males. But yeah, that's all the rules for the run. This is my very first Pokemon run on this channel. If you want to see more Pokemon on the channel, be sure to go down, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Helps out the channel a lot and lets me know you want to see more of this. But without further ado, let's get on into the run. I wasn't feeling too creative with my own name for this run, so I just called myself Mystic. And then once I had control, I decided to set the battle style to set instead of switch. Pokemon X and Y are some of the easier games in the series, so it's nice to have that little bit of extra challenge. On that note, I'm also not allowing myself to use any items in battle, just held items, and then of course Pokeballs to catch my Litleos. I made my way to Aquacore Town, and like I said, I wasn't really too creative with my name in this run, so I just took one of the default nicknames that they give you. I ended up going with Lady M because I felt it was funny to have the nickname sound more formal than my actual name. And this definitely did not get at all annoying for the rest of the playthrough. Now luckily I can catch my Litleos before the first gym, but I do have to pick one of these starters to get me through Sandalwood Forest. I picked Fennekin because I figured Calum having Greninja would make him harder to fight than the other starters. But just to kind of fast forward a bit, I don't think I'm ever going to bring up the Calum fights in this video because his Greninja just refused to use water type moves. I don't know if that's like coded into the game to make it easier for players, or if I just got lucky with the AI, or what happened. But I think there was only one fight that his Greninja ever used a water type move, and it was Water Shuriken. So as a result, none of the Calum fights ever really felt like an actual boss fight. I just kind of blew through them like I would any other trainer. But anyway, I picked the Fennekin, made my way through Sandalwood Forest, and now I can catch my team for the run. I'll save you all the details of how I caught each one and just skip right on ahead to meeting the team. First off, we have Chapel Roan. She's a bit of a prankster, likes to play jokes on her teammates, and we just generally know that we can count on her to lift the team's spirits in hard times. Up next, we have one of Chaperone's favorite targets, Rapinoe. She's the more serious, level-headed one of the group. That's part of the reason Chaperone likes to pick on her so much. And honestly, she kind of appreciates the levity, even though she likes to act annoyed. And up next, we have Barclay. Trained from a young age to be a ninja, Barclay's love of everything sparkly and shiny ran at odds with her family's wishes for her, so she set out on her own and found a new family with us. I swear, if even a single person watching this video gets this reference here, I'm going to be so happy. In fact, you know what? If you get the reference, go ahead and drop a comment explaining it down below. I'll pin the first one I see that gets it right. Now up next we have Ruby Rose. She's always getting into a little bit of trouble. Her and Chapel Roan really get along because she comes up with the ideas that Chapel Roan then uses as pranks. Up next we have number 3 of the troublemaker trio, McKinnon. She's always palling around with Chapel Roan and Ruby Rose. She doesn't really get into much of the trouble herself, but she's always along for the ride. And lastly, we have the hothead of the team, O'Donnell. She's always ready to run into any kind of fight, any kind of battle, ready to take on the world. The only problem is she doesn't exactly know her limits, so she's always running into fights that she can't win, and we're having to bail her out of there. After training up the team just a little bit, it was time to take on the first gym. Now first up is the Bug Gym. And this gym can be a little bit difficult in some runs because she has a fully evolved Pokemon. But let's be honest here, the Bug Gym's never going to be a challenge for a team of 6 fire types. In fact, I only needed one Pokemon for this gym. Ruby Rose took out the Surskit with some headbutts, and then took out the Vivillon with some embers. Now with the Bug Badge in hand, it's time to continue on to Lumio City. Once in Lumio City, I'm given a second starter that I can't use, and this time I took Squirtle for no particular reason. On the way out of the professor's lab, I ran into this guy, Lysandra, who's totally not the bad guy. Seriously, y'all, do not believe your eyes. I know he looks like a villain, he is definitely not the bad guy. Then I run into him again at this cafe, and he's talking about how we have to stop the world from getting any uglier, but I swear he's not the bad guy. Seriously though, it is so strange to me how this game sets up Lysandra being the leader of the evil team to be some sort of twist. Like, it is abundantly clear from the moment you meet him that he's going to end up being a bad guy. I don't know if it's also this obvious in the original Japanese or if this is just more of like a localization issue, but it is just obvious, but they act like it's not. I don't know, this has nothing to do with the run, it's just something I've always wondered about this game. Anyway, as I continue on, I find a rich guy's dog, watch some daytime fireworks, and continue on to the brick wall that is the rock gym. Now the rock gym's always going to be difficult for an all fire type team, but is especially difficult in this game. That's because whereas most early game rock gym leaders will use, Geodudes, maybe Onix, Grant uses 2 fossil Pokemon. And Generation 6 has some of the stronger fossil Pokemon that have been introduced to the series. Now, Amora is not really going to be much of a problem. It's neutral to fire moves instead of being resisted. And on top of that, it has the Refrigerate ability, which turns all of its normal moves into ice moves. But the Tyron can and will sweep my entire team. It's a Rock Dragon type, meaning it doesn't just resist my fire type moves, but it quad resists. And then it can hit like a truck with super effective Rock Tombs or Strong Jaw boosted bites. It ended up taking me about 4 attempts to get past him, each time training between each attempt. And by the time I finally beat him, my entire team was at level 29. My strategy was to go in and make the Amora as weak as I possibly could by hitting it with 6 Noble Roars, bottoming out its attack and special attack. And then I brought out Chaperone and set up 6 workups, making her as strong as she could possibly be going into Tyrant. And I had planned on using Chaperone's maxed out attack stat to hit Tyrant with some super effective rock smashes, but because Amara had been able to paralyze Chaperone, Tyrant actually just outsped her and finished her off with 1 hit. So then I threw out McKinnon and later Ruby Rose to get some Noble Roars off so that I could hopefully have a chance at not going down to 1 hit from each of Tyrant's moves. And this worked once I sent out O'Donnell and whacked away with Rock Smash until the Tyrant finally went down. 6 Semper Tyrannosaurus Rex. As tough as this gym was though, it was not the biggest brick wall I was going to have to face in this run. I had one more major brick wall that was going to come all the way at the end. But we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. For now, we headed on to Shalor City, and after an underwhelming Kalem fight, it was time to take on the gym. The fighting gym was up next, and I really didn't like my chances without at least evolving one of my Litleo into Pyroar. So I evolved Barclay, and then just repeatedly clicked Echoed Voice to win the battle. Even though I have a team full of fire types, this would unironically have been a lot more difficult had she just had one of her Lucarios. Its steel typing would have stopped me from just spamming Echoed Voice, which gets stronger each time you use it in succession. I really don't know why she doesn't use a Lucario for this fight, but for this run, I ain't mad about it. Rumble Badge in hand, I went ahead and got the Mega Bracelet that I'll never be able to use, and continued on. I did have to box one of my Pyroars so that I could use this Lapras for a little bit, because believe it or not, Pyroar doesn't actually learn Surf. I then realized you can skip every trainer on the next route if you just ride the Skiddo all the way to the end and just leave it there. And so that's exactly what I did. Because of how I had to deal with Grant and Karina, I'm slightly over leveled for this part of the game, and I didn't want to get even more over leveled by fighting all those trainers, especially with the next gym being the Grass Gym. Speaking of the Grass Gym, it was a sweep. I just sent in Rapinoe and clicked Fire Fang until all 3 of his Pokemon went down. Next up, there was some Team Flare stuff, but there's not really any challenging battles in this part. It's more just a gauntlet of trainers you gotta get through. So I make my way through it and on to the next gym in Lumio City. Clement's Electric type gym is the first gym in the game that I've had a completely neutral matchup against. And my Pyroar is starting to hit level 35, so they're starting to learn Flamethrower. And yeah, I just spam Flamethrower through all 3 of Clement's Pokemon. Seriously, I don't know whose idea it was to give Pyroar the 90 base power Flamethrower at level 35, but thank you. Thank you so much. It makes the middle portion of this game so much faster and so much easier. After that fight, we move on to the one Kalem fight in the entire game where he decides to actually use a water type move. Also, while watching back the gameplay recording here, I managed to get this one freeze frame of his Greninja that made it look like it was DJing. Don't know why I felt the need to put it into the video, but here you go. Continuing on, the next gym is a fairy type gym, so I resist her strongest attacks. Mawile goes down to 1 Flamethrower, Mr. Mime sets up a light screen, so I have to switch to use in return, and then against Sylveon, something interesting happens. Sylveon's Q-Charm activates. For a split second, I thought the game was glitching in a way that actually leaned into the whole theme of this run, but it turns out Sylveon is actually male. Now this is interesting because Valerie's other two Pokemon, which includes a Mr. Mime, are both female. And in fact, even though this game kind of bucks the trend a little bit, in general, female trainers are given female Pokemon and male trainers are given male Pokemon. Some of y'all may have figured out where I'm going with this, especially since this is a Pride Month video, but it is interesting that on Valerie's team, the one Pokemon that is the quote-unquote wrong gender happens to be the Pokemon that also shares colors with the trans pride flag. So my new headcanon on Valerie is that she is a trans woman who received this Sylveon as an Eevee before her transition. Now if there's something official in the anime or the manga that disproves this, do not let me know, let me have this. We trans folks get very little representation as it is. Anyway, tangent aside, I just switched out to another Pyroar to shake off the infatuation, and took it out pretty quickly. It really wasn't a very difficult fight, that's part of the reason I threw in the tangent. Up next was stopping Team Flare's take over the Pokeball Factory, and the most interesting thing about this is that I, for the first time in my life, chose the Big Nugget over the Master Ball. I didn't necessarily need the Master Ball for this run, and the Big Nugget could be sold for good money, but it don't really even matter, he gives you both anyway. On my way to the next gym, I had to go through the Frost Cavern, and this was way more difficult than it had any right to be. Because, you know, I was expecting this cave to be full of Ice-type trainers, maybe some Ace trainers because I'm starting to get to that point in the game, but no. Hikers and Black Belts. Rock types and Fighting types are some of the most difficult Pokemon for me to fight in this run, so I actually found myself wiping a couple of times to just random trainers, and then having to go through most of my healing supplies. I finally made it through to the end and saved the Abomasnow from Team Flare, and then made my way on to the next gym. We go into the fight against Olympia, and her Sigilif early on sets up a light screen, which would have been a big problem for us had the entire team not just learned Crunch. So I just sent out Barclay and swept her entire team with Crunch. 2 for Sigilif, 2 for Slowking, and 1 for Meowstic. Also, while watching back the footage, I got another funny screenshot, this time of Olympia's Sigilif just looking completely unimpressed. Next up is the finale of the Team Flare plot, which I've been kind of glazing over this entire video. And in the first battle against Lysander, his Gyarados sweeps my team. Gee, I sure hope there's not another trainer later on who also has a Gyarados. Like, I don't know, just spitballing here, maybe an Elite Four member or something. Nah, they wouldn't do that, would they? But worries about the future aside, the solution for this fight was pretty simple. I just trained up my team a couple more levels so they learned Hyper Voice. And with that, we were able to make it through Lysander's team. In the fight against what's probably my favorite legendary in all of Pokemon, you're actually forced to catch Xerneas, so I just threw the Master Ball at it. Now, since Lysander's normal Gyarados that wasn't Mega Evolved was able to sweep my entire team earlier, I was more than a little worried about Lysander's Mega Gyarados in the final fight against him, but O'Donnell was actually able to dodge an Aqua Tail, so it actually turned out to be kind of easier than the last time I had fought him with a regular Gyarados. So with that, Lysander's defeated, Team Flare's plot is thwarted, and we can move on to the final gym. And yeah, I have a team of 6 fire types, all of whom know Flamethrower. The Ice Gym was never going to be a challenge. On to the Pokemon League! First up is Wikstrom, and just like with the Ice Gym, I swept through his entire team using Flamethrower. The only Pokemon that was able to put up somewhat of a fight was Probopass, because my Flamethrowers were only neutral against it. As a result, it was actually able to take down a couple of my Pokemon, but we were never in any real danger in this fight. Against Malva, spamming Hyper Voice worked incredibly well until we got to Chandelure, and then we just used Crunch to take that out. Against Drasna, her Dragalge put up one heck of a fight with super effective Surfs, and then Druddigon actually one-shot Rapinoe with a super effective superpower. After that, though, we were able to take out her last 2 Pokemon pretty easily with Hyper Voices from O'Donnell and Chapel Roan. Now I know I flew through these first 3 fights in the Elite Four pretty quickly, but that's really just because I wanted to give you a good idea of how it felt in this Elite Four experience. We had very little trouble with the first 3 members of the Elite Four, but then we hit a massive brick wall when we came across Seabold. The 1-2 punch of his Clawitzer and Gyarados absolutely wrecked my team, and actually sent me to Bulbapedia so that I could come up with a new strategy. And that's when I discovered that Pyroar, for some reason, can learn Solar Beam. So I went out and found the TMs for both Solar Beam and Sunny Day taught it to all 6 of my Pyroar, and then came back to try again. I thought maybe this would make the difference, but in reality, the only difference it made is that instead of sweeping my team with Waterfall, Gyarados swept my team with Earthquake. It was clear to me that I really just needed some more levels. Now, I had been trying to do this run legit, but I had been playing this game for about a dozen hours at this point, and I really didn't like the idea of redoing that 3-hour leveling session that I had before Grant, so I caved and cheated in some rare candies. Now, I know from the general Pokemon community here on YouTube, most of y'all do not care whatsoever about this, but for those few of you who thinks it does invalidate the run, I guess you can consider it failed here. That said, especially considering I've long since maxed out my EVs, I'm not considering it failed. It's really just a time saver for me. I tried the fight again every couple of levels, but it wasn't until my Pokemon were around levels 69 to 70 that I was actually able to take Seabolt out. What ended up getting me the win at this level was that my Solar Beams were just barely short of a one-shot on Clawitzer, meaning he used both of his Venusaurs on it instead of the Gyarados. That way when the Gyarados came out, I could just keep throwing lions at it until it finally went down. After that, Barbarical was a one-shot with Solar Beam, and then Starmie was able to get up a light screen, so it took 2 Solar Beams. And now that we've climbed that mountain, the champion is nowhere nearly as difficult. That's one thing that I kind of remembered when I was playing these games for the first time in 10 years for this challenge. There were a lot of very memorable characters that are very forgettable fights. Like take Diantha here for example. Honestly, for me, my favorite champion design-wise. But her battle? She's a bit of a pushover. First out 4 is Halucha. I set up a Sunny Day and then a Flying Press takes out about half of my HP before I just one-shot it with a Flamethrower. Up next is Tyrantrum, which could be a little bit difficult given my team, but I just take it out in 2 Solar Beams. The first of which gets a flinch because I have Ruby Rose holding a King's Rock. Up next is Goodra, which does actually manage to take down Ruby Rose with a couple of Muddy Waters, and then hit 3 Focus Blasts in a row to take down McKinnon and deal half damage to Barclay. Despite that insanely bad luck for me, Barclay does manage to take it out with a couple of Hyper Voices. Next out is Aurora, so I set up another Sunny Day, and it sets up a light screen, which is annoying, but I managed to get the burn off a Flamethrower, so 3 Flamethrowers takes it down. Gourgeist is out next, and by this point Barclay is low enough in health and paralyzed, so a single Seed Bomb from the Pumpkin takes her down. But then Rapinoe is able to come out, set the sun back up, and take out the Gourgeist with a single Flamethrower. Out last is her Mega Gardevoir, which goes down to 2 Flamethrowers, winning us the battle and proving that yes, you can beat Pokemon X with a gay pride. Y'all, this was probably the dumbest idea I could have come up with for my first ever Pride Month video. But I hope you enjoyed it. Happy Pride Month. Like this video, comment, subscribe, any of that if you want to see me do more Pokemon content on the channel. But next video, I'm actually going to be going back into my normal Bethesda challenges. I'm actually going to be in Fallout 4. It's not going to be the Keyblade run. I do actually have that scheduled for a little bit later this year, though. I just kind of wanted to get a challenge or 2 underneath my belt in vanilla Fallout 4 before I started really working with mods. But anyway, that's all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and until next time, bye!